to cover with you now is a little modification for the core work. I know a lot of you have been having trouble with your lumbar extensors kicking in and your hip flexors pulling your lower back into a curve when you try to lift your legs. So what we can do is we can make use of reciprocal inhibition, as my last post described, to try and help you out a little bit. Now, as I said, ultimately we want the core strong enough that it can actually hold while you do movements using your hip flexors without using your glutes. But for the moment, if it helps you get that little bit of extra control and you can gradually work away from having to use your glutes, that's perfectly acceptable. Now, there is also the option, I'll just show you, I put up the picture, but to get yourself a little towel, not too thick, probably a third is okay. You don't want it too thick so as that you're actually really heavily tilting the pelvis, but just enough that you can get your tailbone on, lay yourself down just under the very edge of your tailbone, just to give you that little bit of extra help with your pelvic tilt. So that's the way that you can do it. From there, if I switch on my core, I can actually get my one foot up off the bench, and the left one is my problem one, so there's a little bit more shaking. I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's much harder work. So you can do 1 foot at a time, and I forgot to breathe. Always remember to breathe, and still doing 2 at once. I'm just getting that little bit of lumbar extension. You probably won't be able to see it, but I'm just lifting off that little bit. So feel free to do 1 foot at a time. If you notice your abdominals bowing out, so if I try to use my rectus abdominis, you can see, I don't know if you can see, it starts to dip in here because I'm just using the middle. You can see that if I do a little crunch, it's using these ones. They're not the ones that you want to be using. So if you do notice your abdomen bowing out in the middle, come back to neutral, really get your core zipped up, use your transverse abdominis, and then lighten 1 foot at a time. Make sure when you're doing it that you're not rocking, because your body will often do that, cheating. Make sure you're not doing that. Keep your body really good and solid, and just lift ever so slightly. You can also start bringing your legs down lengthways, again holding, make the movement really slow. Try not to let your core go between. And back again. Do that for probably around about 15-ish repeats per leg. So that's with the towel there. Now, what I want to show you is using your glutes to help just that little bit. So by switching on your glutes, you're actually inhibiting the hip flexors. So by doing that, you're actually just helping switch off the hip flexors and control that contraction a little bit, and control the contraction in the lower back as well. So get your core muscles switched on again, make sure they're good and solid, and then what I want you to do is just a tiny little bum squeeze. So just clench those buttocks ever so slightly. You don't want to do it too strong, because that will mean that your hip flexors are completely switched off and you will find it very hard to lift your leg. So just a slight squeeze, just to complement your abdominal contraction, and then do the lift. It's actually remarkably hard to remember to coordinate all these muscles. So if you have to set up a bit of a chant in your head, so abdominals, glutes, lift, abdominals, glutes, lift. Again, that left side is significantly harder for me. Then, and breathe. Again, the breathing. So I can actually feel that that's done a reasonable bit of work. Now, I haven't done any hip flexor stretches there today, just having a look. My right side feels fine, left side, even just getting my core switched on this side is harder, and it's big pull right down through here. So ideally I would have done those stretches first before I set into the core stuff. But that will give you a couple of options if you're struggling with getting your core switched on, holding the core while you're doing light hip flexor work. So by switching the glutes on, you're actually just moderating the amount of contraction that your hip flexors and your lower back can actually do. So it does help keep the core that little bit more stable. Over time, I want you to start not contracting as much through your glutes. We will be doing some work to strengthen up the glutes, but we want to be doing that separately. But if it gets you going and starts to get that little bit of extra core control without putting your lower back into a real arch and compressing everything, that is good. So hop to it, have fun, keep me posted on how you're getting on with it all, and pretty soon after we've got the glute stuff under control, we'll start to transfer some of this onto the horse. So that will be interesting. Feel free when you're on the horse the next time to start thinking about the legs growing down towards the ground, opening out the hip flexors, same sort of movement, making sure your tailbone is under you but not jammed under you. Just start thinking about how you're actually sitting in the saddle and how all these areas are affected once you are in the saddle. And we will continue on when we continue on. Thank you.